You're entering the future-ready CNBC TV18 Ebix Cash Studio.
Hello and welcome to Startup Street from the CNBC TV18 Ebix Cash Studio. I'm Arundhati Ramanan, and with me are Shruti Mishra and Mugdha Warrior. These are the top headlines from the startup space. Online meat delivery company Licious raises $52 million at a valuation of $1 billion, becomes the 29th unicorn to emerge out of India in 2021.
Esper bagged $60 million in a Series C funding led by Inside Partners, along with participation from existing investors, including Scale Venture Partners, Madrona Ventures, and Roots Ventures.
Public transport tech company Chalor secures $40 million in Series C funding led by Lightrock India and Filter Capital. Round also saw participation from existing investors, Waterbridge Ventures, Rain Venture Partners, and others to use $10 million of this dollars to buy back ESOPs.
Ola acquires geospatial services provider GeoSpock. Post-acquisition, the Ola team will be building new geolocation technologies, says Ola's CEO in a blog post.
A federal court orders Tesla to pay over $130 million in damages to a black former worker. This after it finds that he was subjected to a racially hostile work environment, according to reports by Wall Street Journal. In a message to employees that Tesla posted on its website, the automaker noted that trial concerned racial slurs heard on the factory floor and racist graffiti in the bathrooms.
Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp shut down for more than 6 hours, making it the social media platform's worst outage since 2008. Facebook says the root cause of this outage was a faulty configuration change on its backbone routers, adds that there is no evidence of user data compromise due to this downtime.
Those were the headlines that we're tracking for you this evening on What's Brewing Today. Just a few days after OYO filed its DRHP for its IPO, many aggrieved hotel owners that have pending complaints against the company are up in arms. Mugdha, take us through those details. That's correct. Right after hotel aggregator OYO filed its DRHP for a 8,430 crore rupees IPO, several hotels and partners have come forward to raise issues over pending dues. Now, a Mumbai-based hotel owner has sought a forensic audit of OYO by the Economic Offences Wing ahead of the company's IPO and has said that OYO's upcoming IPO will affect quote-unquote gullible investors. We also understand that the Federation of Hotel and Restaurant Association of India, which is the FHRAI, is also set to approach the Economic Offences Wing as well as other agencies with issues of hotel owners against OYO as the company prepares to go public. Now, the Mumbai-based owner of Hotel Samrat has approached the Mumbai police against OYO and has sought a forensic audit of the company by the EOW. The hotel owner claims cheating of 70 lakh rupees from OYO and additional pending dues and has alleged misappropriation of funds, fraud and cheating by OYO. OYO did not respond to CNBC TV18's queries. Now remember that as per OYO's DRHP, it is facing multiple material and criminal litigations, including 3 criminal litigations against subsidiaries and 14 against promoter Ritesh Agarwal. Well, moving on. We have a new unicorn. D2C fresh meat and seafood brand Licious has become India's first D2C unicorn with a Series G raise of $52 million led by IIFL. The company, remember, had in July raised $192 million in its Series F round and had become the highest funded company in the fresh animal protein business category. We have with us Abhay Hanjura, co-founder of Licious, to talk about the new unicorn status and the company's plans. Abhay, welcome on the show. You're the first unicorn from the growing D2C space in the country. What does the tag mean for the company and for the D2C sector as a whole? Will we see now more unicorns from the space?
Well, I certainly hope so, because up until now, as it is, unicorns are believed to be mythical creatures, right? But there's a bit of myth and there's a bit of fantasy and there is a lot of hard work and determination. And I think that's how you get there. But, to answer your question, I think India's time in the D2C space is here, and this infusion of equity and our unicorn status should certainly open up the floodgates for other D2C brands who are doing some phenomenal work for consumers, for the categories that they're operating in. So we truly hope this becomes a watershed moment here, and D2C is no longer seen as niche, is no longer seen as as non-scalable, is no longer seen as यार इसका यूएस का मॉडल कहाँ है, etc., etc. I think D2C brands are solving real problems, are here to stay and here to make an impact, and we just hope to
D2C
usher
is
in, a next wave
absolutely.
of, change. Yeah.
D2C is no more niche, it is now mainstream. And like you said, it's a watershed moment. In fact, but you just recently in July raised close to $200 million. So what led to this new round so soon? Of course, you have your plans of your offline stores, and we understand that you're close to launching your offline stores. Is a lot of the capital going to go towards your offline expansion plans?
Well, some of it, but look, honestly, the round was not really planned. The last time we raised 200, we had supply of, rather we had demand of 700, and we could obviously not consume so much, right? So we had to say no to a few people. The Eiffel and vendors folks were in touch with us, and this was a good time to therefore accommodate, some more capital infusion. We also believe that. Some of these guys, the vendors, has obviously played a critical role in fundraising for many startups across different stages, and IIFL with their pedigree and strong track record in public markets, can actually get Licious, IPO ready for future, because that's an important milestone in our long-term journey. So, a bit of that on the strategic side.
Okay.
But so far as the capital allocation is concerned, yes. So offline technology and ready to cook and ready to eat, as categories and focus areas is where the capital will get diverted, Mumta.
Okay, so you've raised an important point. You brought in IIFL to make Licious IPO ready. How soon is that, as part of your long term that you've mentioned? How soon do we expect to see an IPO?
Yeah, so I think we're not in a hurry because we are building Licious for posterity. So there are a couple of important milestones in our minds, which we believe will get Licious IPO ready. The most important bit is the ESG pledge that we have taken as category creators and leaders. We believe sustainability is at the forefront of our category creation agenda. So, as the organization takes make significant progress on that agenda over the next few years. So we want to be ESG compliant for sure. And the second is, clearly, delivering an EBITDA that we are proud of consistently. So not an EBITDA for a month, 2 months, a quarter. We want to do that, consistently. So we think that, anything between 2 to 3 years is the right horizon of that.
All right, so 2 to 3 years, and we could see an IPO from Licious. Another point, apart from the offline expansion that you had mentioned when you had joined us in July after your fundraise, was your global plans, global expansion plans. Could you give us a status update on that? Have you identified any new markets that Licious will expand to?
So good question. Of course, there's a lot of incoming interest here from some large conglomerates operating out of countries which are having a similar sort of a problem statement which mimics India. So Southeast Asia, Middle East and GCC are clearly areas of interest. Unfortunately, the fear of the second wave kind of once again has delayed that a little bit. But a lot of local due diligence, etc., has already happened. So as we look at international markets, we believe that we are a full stack farm to fork player, right? So we have to go there and actually build the supply chain, build the farmers network, build an entire to consumer product proposition, so on and so forth. So it's a nuts and bolts hardcore execution business. So once pandemic sort of curves down that way is the right time for us to start planning execution. So sometime early next year is if all goes well, is the timeline when we should start off. But yeah, so Southeast Asia and GCC Middle East is clearly on the cards.
All right, so early next year then. And Abhay, I have to ask you that there's also this growing popular trend of plant-based protein that is emerging. Several celebrities have launched their own brands, several are endorsing plant-based protein. Do you see this eating into your market share, or do you think there's a separate market for these products? Is this giving you sleepless nights?
No, not now, not now for sure. See, plant-based, opportunities have made a lot of noise internationally, but let's also understand the international context, right? So you Europe, Australia, US, etc., the average per capita consumption of meat and seafood is anywhere between 80 kilos to 120 kilos per capita. And India is still languishing at early single digits, 8 kilos per capita, which makes us also the world's one of the most protein deficient nations. So in the consumers trade up journey, we believe animal protein will lead the charge. We've seen that happening in China, Vietnam, Thailand, as countries have become more prosperous and economically better off. Animal protein trade up is the first decision that the consumer makes. So I think India still brass tacks need to be solved. The industry needs to be fundamentally sort of reimagined. We cannot compare it to outcomes outside India. And the other thing is, Mugdha, I don't know how much you've seen this data, but 98% of all the innovation in food has failed. Because we've tried to apply a broad brush to the Indian consumer. So what has to be done in the context of alternative proteins, including the plant-based ones, is that the products have to make the mark in such a way that these products become a part of consumers' lives, right? Indian consumers are not devoid of delicious vegetarian choices, unlike their Western counterparts that depend upon potatoes and lettuce and beans and whatnot, right? So India has a rich vegetarian culinary heritage.
Absolutely, Abhay.
Yeah, so I think one has to really think about that. But look,
point noted. Point noted.
Yeah. So that's a limited view. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's the product that will matter. And of course, there are a lot of alternatives for Indian consumers. So you're not too worried about plant-based protein picking up as a trend. But Abhay, thank you so much for joining us. And that was Licious. That was the newest unicorn on the block. But time to slip into a short break. Coming up, fintech startup ProcCap bags $30 million in a Series C fundraise. What's the company's growth plans? We find out on the other side. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Startup Street. Fintech startup ProcCap that provides corporate-led last-mile financing solutions in India has raised $30 million in primary equity capital as part of its Series C investment round led by existing investor Tiger Global Management and Creation Investments. Sequoia Capital India, which led the last two funding rounds for ProcCap, also participated in this financing, and the company will use new capital to build a deeper supply chain banking platform for its merchants and corporate network in India. To talk about the road ahead, joining me now is Pallavi Srivastava, co-founder and director of ProcCap, and my colleague Arundhati. Pallavi, welcome to Startup Street. You're on a fundraising spree. In just the last 3 months, ProcCap has raised $55 million. First, tell me why the need to raise capital, and also take me through the growth plans, any new offerings in the pipeline.
Thanks, Shruti, for having me here again. It's great to be back after 3 months. And we are looking at this round as an extension of our Series B that happened 3 months back. So overall, $55 million in 3 months. So definitely a result of, the hard work that the team has put, but also the demand that we are seeing from the market, both from the corporates as well as from our end customers, which are the retailers. So we are looking at a great next year. We've been growing almost 100%, quarter on quarter. So there is a lot of excitement, in the market currently for buy now, pay later kind of a product for retailers that we are building towards. The plan right now with the new round of funding is really going to be across 3 broad areas. One is to really service the demand. We already have 60 plus corporates on our network, close to 500,000 retailers on the platform. So really kind of, building the book, and we're looking at $1 billion kind of disbursals by end of the financial year 2021. Secondly, the idea is to build a host of new products for the corporates and the retailer network. Currently, if you look at the transactions between a brand, a distributor, and a retailer, a lot of it is informal, sort of not really, the transactions are not happening digitally. So there's a lot of scope to build new products to formalize and digitize this channel. So that's where we are going to look at coming up, and you'll hear a lot more from us in terms of what new products we are coming up with. We've already launched beta version of some of the products and seeing great excitement in the market for those. And finally, a lot of funds and focus is going to be on building the brand. So we've been sort of working under the radar, trying to build for our customers. The idea now is to go all out and build that brand recall. So you will also see more of us in the market, as we go along. So these are the broad three areas where we're going to focus on.
Lots going on there, Pallavi. But you've seen 400% growth in monthly disbursal volume over the last 1 year, and like you just mentioned, you now aim to reach $1 billion in disbursals by March 2022. So take me through the growth numbers and what makes you bullish on achieving this target that you've set for yourself.
First of all, I think the biggest reason we are very bullish about is the sheer demand, right? And we've already executed in this market. We have not executed in one industry, but 10 industries, and seen substantial scale where corporates are now seeing us as very strong, relevant partners to formalize their supply chains, grow their sales. So we are a very important and a strong sales partner for our corporates clients. And secondly, I think the whole execution, right? So we are perhaps only fintech which is doing corporate-led last mile financing at a scale that we are doing. And we see that ourselves are really making a huge dent in this space and adding value to the retail economy of India. Apart from that, I think one of the things that we are really seeing is the kind of network that we've already built. We are getting demand both from the corporates, the clients, the retailers, as well as the supply partners. So we work with large banks, NBFCs. So there is a lot of excitement. Our efficiency metrics are intact while really growing the book. The portfolio quality has been very good. Right. Those are some of the reasons we are very confident. We have crossed across 2 pandemic cycles and come out winning. So that's what is the reason behind the confidence.
All right, Pallavi. Hi, Arundhati here. Now, today, ProcCap's platform is tapped by over 60 corporates and 450,000 retailers. So can you take me through your supply chain-driven business model and also elaborate on your scoring engine?
Yes, absolutely. So what we do is we work with corporates who are wanting to fund their supply chains and allow us to really help them in a lot of other things in terms of, products that can help them, better improve their transactions, digitize the supply chains, improve a lot of, existing processes, and also in the process, build in efficiencies into the channel. So corporates today don't have the visibility into the last mile retailer network, right? So one of the things that we do by virtue of financing is also throwing a lot of data back to them, right? So a lot of insights that the corporates get to see through us and the dashboards that we provide to them. So that's number one. Number two, and we are able to do that, but also at the same time, the corporates open up their network, right? So a lot of data that flows into us either directly via corporates or it comes through their ecosystem. And this data is the real data, right? It's the supply chain transactions data between a retailer and the corporate. So very rich, high quality data that allows us to get a very good understanding of how this customer is really behaving on an informal credit today from the brand and the channel, and therefore how we can take a very informed call on how this customer is going to behave on a formal credit. 40% of our customers are new to credit. They don't even have a CIBIL score, not even a credit card. So we are providing them first time access to credit by using this data and our underwriting and scoring engine.
Okay.
So that's what Yeah.
Pallavi, at the beginning, you mentioned the buy now, pay later program vertical that you've started. The market is booming for small loans. You have an MSE buy now, pay later product. How does that work and how is it different from the usual credit offerings?
So the way it works, Shruti, is that we finance for the customers to buy inventory of the brand, right? So while earlier there was an informal credit available in the channel, we are effectively coming there and formalizing it. So it is not that the retailers did not have access to any credit; they were fulfilling that demand through an informal source. And so what we do is when we come in, we are able to provide upfront payment to their suppliers. And then we charge, on a basis of an interest, we are able to then recover from the customers. So that's how we're seeing that there is a huge demand, the latent demand that was there, which we are trying to now surface and fulfill.
All right. Can you also take me through your strategic partnerships? Where do you see this going? While you've boarded several big corporate names, you aim to be the largest digital bank for small retailers. So where do you see the next leg of growth coming from?
So Arundhati, two things. One, we are, on one side, we are adding our, corporate base. The other side, we are trying to really create a pull in the market where now the retailers and distributors start looking at us, and therefore the whole, focus on marketing and creating the product suite. So the idea is that, the customers, our aim is to become a product that is really required by the brands, the distributors, the retailers to really function, well with each other. So the pull is really coming from both the directions. One is from a bottom-up pull from retailers, who are really wanting PropCap, who are seeing the value, how we have created immense value for them, help them grow their business as well as help them increase their margins to some extent. And on the other side, from the corporates who are looking for this product for their supply chains. So that's the kind of infrastructure that we are trying to build and service both these segments of the demand.
All right, Pallavi, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We're completely out of time. And with that, it is a wrap on this edition of Startup Street. More news and updates continue on the other side. Stay tuned.